Okay, you want to know the down and dirty, quickest way to make this place look absolutely beautiful? I will tell you right now. First of all,
this is episode number 13 of Short-Term Rental Success Stories. Welcome back to Short-Term Rental Success Stories. I'm your host, Julian Sage. This is a show where I talk to hosts about their journeys in starting and growing their short-term rental business. My goal is that you'll be able to walk away with practical information that'll help you become a better host and learn how to scale your business. Since we are a new show, reviews would greatly help us grow, so please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, Facebook, or wherever you're actively listening, and please leave us an honest review, and we'll give your review or rental a shout out in the next episode. Today I had the honor of speaking with Lindsey and Judah Michael. Lindsey and Judah are a power couple based in San Diego, California, who are full-time real estate investors. Lindsey and Judah had humble beginnings renting out a single room, but quickly realized that short-term rental investing was something that they should start to scale, and have since then had over 20 listings since 2012. Lindsey and Judah now follow the short-term rental BRRRR method and have found a lot of success. They share so much golden information in this episode, such as their secrets to making properties look like they come from a magazine for $2,500, their approach to analyzing and finding properties in new markets, and how they've been able to capitalize during slow months and renting out room by room. If you haven't done so already, go on over to our Facebook group, Short-Term Rental Success Secrets, to talk with Lindsey, Judah, and other successful hosts. If you like my show notes for this episode, go to shorttermsage.com/EP13, or if you like my show notes sent directly to your inbox every week, then go to shorttermsage.com/show notes. With all that being said, on to this week's conversation. Welcome back, hosts. Today I have the special honor of speaking with Lindsey and Judah Michael. Lindsey and Judah, would you please let the audience know a little bit more about who you are and what inspired you to get into short-term rentals?
Absolutely. You go first.
Hey guys, Lindsey Michael here and Judah Michael. And we operate out of San Diego, California. But that in and of itself was kind of a deciding factor on how to get into short-term rentals, because as you know, you probably want to go to San Diego. You may have been to San Diego. You know how awesome it is. So I was actually referred by a friend who was doing Airbnb up in Oakland, and I was kind of at my wit's end at this point. It was back in 2012, and I was dealing with long-term roommates. And basically what happened was I had my own apartment. It was a 2-bedroom, and I was in one room, 2 girls in the other room. They were long-term. And they decided one day to not pay their rent. And the landlord told me this later, that they didn't pay the rent. And they decided to just take everything that they owned, plus some of what I owned too, and say sayonara. And they just checked out. They just went off and became invisible.
Midnight move out.
Yeah. And they left me with the bill. So I got sick and fed up of these roommates who have like a right to your home, and they don't have respect for it. So a friend introduced me to Airbnb and the whole concept of short-term rentals back in 2012.
It was relatively new at the time.
Yeah, and I was pretty sketched out by it, but I looked into it a little bit, and I was convinced to go out on the ledge. And I paid off the landlord, and I went for it, and I furnished the room with Salvation Army, actually. And I put the place on Airbnb, and before I know it, I was not only covering my own, like that room's rent, my own room's rent, plus an extra like several $100s a month. So I became totally sold at that point that short-term rentals were definitely where I needed to be.
I think it's always so interesting hearing people's stories, how they start, because it's never like, it's never the approach like, I'm in this to make money. It's always some type of interesting situation. Like yours was that your roommate stole from you, and now you want to, decide who gets to live with you and who stays here. And from there, it's kind of blossomed into this very profitable, very successful journey for you. Now, you said that you're a interior designer and you're also a real estate flipper. From that point, when you decided to start doing your Airbnbs, when did it kind of click where it's like, okay, I need to kind of push this a little bit farther? Because obviously 2012 wasn't super popular like it is now. How, when did you decide to kind of go full on and start purchasing more properties and scaling this up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at the time, Judah and I were just dating when I got started. He wasn't a part of it, but we were planning to get married. So tell them about what we did with our first place together.
So we were searching. Our lease was up where we had been, and the person that owned the place was going to sell it. So we'd started doing Airbnb, and we just had in our mind, we're going to find a place where we can live in one portion of the house, but rent out the other rooms individually. So we specifically were looking for a place in San Diego that would allow us to be, for instance, on the top floor, but the middle level was maybe the entrance. It had its own room, and the bottom level was like its own studio or its own casita. And we actually managed to find something just like that close to downtown, which is really popular year-round because of the convention center, all the business people that come into town, and it is very close to Little Italy. And so when we found it, we're like, wow, this could be a really good opportunity for us to feel like we have our own space where nobody's coming in and using our bathroom, but at the same time, 2/3 of the home is rented out, and it's basically subsidizing our portion of the rent to the point where then eventually we don't have to pay our rent at all because the middle level and the bottom level are providing all of that. And it was in an HOA, which provided some additional challenges and hurdles to overcome. But we were immediately thinking when we were engaged and about to get married, let's find a spot. Places like that from the jump, and continue to do so.
Now, so you were basically house hacking back then, but Airbnb house hacking. Could your just renting it out, long-term rentals, could you have been able to afford your basically lived rent-free off of that?
I don't think so. I think it had to be short-term because we would have somebody in there at a really low rate midweek that was just a commuter that was maybe willing to just pay a very modest amount, but for the convenience of not having to commute 2 or 3 hours, back and forth from Los Angeles or out from, Arizona. And then on the weekends, you'd have families and couples and different people. And so you basically had 2 to 3 times as much income produced per room or per level than you would from just a long-term person with like a 12-month lease. So it was definitely way more advantageous for what we were looking to do.
For sure.
And so you purchased this or you're subletting this property. When did you decide to did you stick with the rental arbitrage approach, or did you decide to go the owning? Where did you decide to go after this?
So from that point, we were in there for a year, and then we moved on to another awesome spot next year.
Right by SeaWorld.
Yeah, so great location, 3,100 square foot property, including a detached cottage, and it had a pool and a lot of rooms in the house too. So we did one more year of like the rental arbitrage, and we even got permission from the landlord. That did not stop her from wanting to sell the house.
She revoked that permission later on, so that was an adventure in and of itself.
Yeah. So then what we were basically doing was saving up money, and we put down a good down payment on a house about 20 minutes from downtown San Diego. So it ended up being a pretty good location. Not as much for like the nightly, but it ended up turning into more of like a weekly type thing, and also even some monthly as well. So we were living in the master suite. And granted, this is our own home. We can do whatever we want with it, which is great. So we had 3 extra rooms, and we would do week to week, month to month. And I mean, some people even like to pay by the week and would even stay up to like 6 months. And fine. I mean, hey, if you want to rent my Airbnb for 6 months, by all means, because you're making a lot more.
So people were paying the nightly rate for their Airbnb, but doing that for a six month term. What did they just just say to you like, hey, we'd like to extend this contract a little bit longer and just keep on paying these rates? They didn't want to do like a longer term rental?
We would do week to week and occasionally even month to month on Airbnb and on some of the short-term rental websites, but also on Craigslist and others. And what we found, and this to me is very valuable, there's 95 or 98% of the market is geared just towards a 6-month, 12-month or longer long-term lease. You're locked in. The rest of the market, the other 3 or 5%, is just basically very short-term, like just a weekend, a week at the most. There was no niche. There was no portion of the market that was devoted to the transition housing or the bridge housing, as I like to call it, where you have somebody, they've just moved to San Diego, they need a place to live, but they don't want to commit to a 12-month lease just yet until they explore, kind of feel out the different parts of the city and decide where they want to put their roots down. So we got a ton of people that instead of spending $600 a month, were happy to pay about $1,000 a month for a furnished room, not the whole house, just a furnished room, even though they knew that was like way more expensive than locking into a contract. They were wanting to do that for about 4 to 6 weeks. And they could do this through Airbnb, but like I said, a number of these were through Craigslist. And it was typically people that were out of a lease and about to move from San Diego, had just moved to San Diego, were going through a divorce, were in some sort of a transition, and they needed something longer than short term, but shorter than long term. And it's been very, very popular for us because so few people are willing to do it. So we kind of carved out our own little unique hybrid in between short term and long term. And during the summer months, we would normally have 7 to 10 applicants for every one room we had available. But occasionally you'd have people be like, $1,000 for a room, that's ridiculous, even if it is furnished. And I'd be like, well, Extended Stay America is $22.50 a month, so you can always go with them. And then they understood that it's not for a long-term thing. But some people would get there and they would just want to stay longer because their need to explore just ended up taking 3, 4, 5 months. And we were happy to host them. We oftentimes became friends with a lot of the people that lived with us for a medium range period of time.
I was pretty curious because when we were talking before the interview, you said that you were doing rooms, and it's not as common to do individual rooms from the Facebook groups and what everybody says. So I was pretty curious as to why you're doing that. Is that the market that you're still kind of the niche that you're in, the longer term, short term stays for the individual rooms?
No, so we wanted to simplify, even if it was going to possibly even bring down our monthly income a little bit. We wanted to just rent out the whole house on Airbnb instead for that particular residence. So what we did was even though we're living in another house, totally separate house at this point, we're doing room by room over there. It's around the corner, so it's really close and convenient. But we just decided to do just regular Airbnb for the whole entire residence at that point, and just kind of make it a little bit easier.
Okay, and what have you found to be more profitable, the renting the whole house or the room by room?
You know what? We're coming up. It's pretty similar. Yeah, it's pretty similar. But we're coming up on the summer season right now, so I know it's going to jump up on that monthly income for the whole entire house. So I think we'll probably end up getting $5,000 to $7,000 a month off of that house at least during the summer months, and the payment is like $1,800. Yeah, $1,900 a month. So that one's going to be a great cash flow.
And
go ahead.
Was that the one that you own, or that you're rental arbitrage?
We own that one.
Yeah,
we own that one as well.
One thing I was going to say that you can't measure with the cash flow is that it's certainly a lot more convenient and easy to do the whole house versus individual rooms. Because when you're doing the individual rooms, you'll have some people staying longer term relative to short term. So again, maybe like 2, 3, 4 months. Some people that are just staying there for a few weeks, and you have to be very aware of the demographics that you have. So if you have a single man in his 50s that works at a car dealership and is just in transition and looking for 4 to 6 weeks, and then you have a young female college student, and it's a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath. Obviously, they're sharing one of those bathrooms, and you just kind of generally either want to have all women or all guys, and generally all kind of middle age or all young people. But ideally not all young people because they'll trash the place, and ideally not all guys because they'll trash the place too. So you have to be aware. You get an eclectic mix, but you want to try to put people together that are going to get along and are going to gel pretty well. And that's not always easy, especially in the winter months if you don't have as many options or as many applicants. So that's one of the like interpersonal dynamic hurdles with doing room by room, as opposed to the whole house. It's just a family of, mom, dad, and a few kids.
But I will say that when we were living like in downtown and right next to SeaWorld and everything, so this is like right in the heart of the action, room by room all day long, like definitely room by
It was
room.
easy, yeah.
Like living downtown, very urban, walkable neighborhood, definitely do room by room pretty much all year long, definitely, yeah.
People just treat the rooms like their own little unit. They just hibernate in the room. They don't really interact, so it's fine.
Yeah, and then since we moved and bought a house 20 minutes from downtown, it just ended up, that kind of changes things because you don't get as many nightly requests and people want to stay weekly and pay a little bit lower price. So you just kind of have to adjust the measures and everything.
I think kind of the ideal client in a lot of people's minds is that person that's going to stay there for like that 6 month and pay the larger fee, kind of like that long-term rental, but paying more short-term rental rates. Do you treat them any differently? Do you still do like the cleaning services? Because that's something that does take a lot out. Or do you treat them more like a long-term tenant?
That is a great question. And you know what? I actually want to get in there and clean. Like I want to get in there and have my cleaning person come and help me, because sometimes like when people are there for a really long time, they don't clean themselves.
And they don't tell you when they spilled wine.
And they don't wash the sheets or, clean up soak up their wine on the carpet or something. So for me, short-term rentals have been better because you can get in there and clean often and make sure it's kept tip-top shape and that it's really respected and well cared for. So I definitely do try and get in there and clean as much as I can. It's sometimes like they don't want somebody to come in and disturb what they've found to be their space.
So the short-term rental tenants are actually better than the long-term rental tenants, but the long-term rental ones are paying more?
I love short-term rental tenants like for so many different reasons. One of them being the fact that you're not stuck with anybody for a really long time. You could always say like, hey, just so you know, we have somebody else checking in next week, so we wanted to give you a heads up. Or even, if it's month to month, next month, if it's just not a good fit. So, we have had literally everything happen in the book. When you're doing this, like, 8 years or something, like, yeah, we've had literally everything happen in the book pretty much. So it's nice to have that out.
And what would you kind of say is your ideal customer after having dealt with so many different types of people and situations?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We've talked about this before.
I would say it's somebody that is basically just there to eat breakfast, shower, and sleep. And the rest of the time they're at the beach, they're at Balboa Park, they're out with family for a graduation or, a wedding, quinceañera, whatever it is. But they're hardly there. You don't even, if you're doing it by the room, you don't even realize that they live with you. You see them once a week and, catch up briefly. And if it's just an Airbnb, vacation person that's there for the weekend or the week, they're only around for a few hours to kind of clean up and get some sleep and then go out to their next event.
So from my understanding is you kind of cater depending on the season, how you're going to be advertising the unit for longer term or shorter term rentals.
I'll drop the price a little bit in the winter, and I'll also open it up for a little bit longer term. And then in the summer, it's definitely just short term, because it doesn't make sense to give away a room in July in San Diego when there's Comic-Con and you can rent out a tent in your backyard for $500. It doesn't make sense to lock somebody in for the whole month.
Yeah, but we always want to start advertising for long term come like mid-August, because here, and it's not going to be the same depending on your city, but here everything dries up September 1st.
Just plummets.
Yeah,
all of a sudden,
it's so hard to rent out the spot.
You go from getting messages like nonstop to just totally flatline.
Yeah, so that's when we want to start doing our like month by month in some cases, depending on the location. So.
And are you doing a lot of direct bookings with that, or is it mostly through the OTAs?
I would say half and half. We still get long inquiries. A lot of times, for example, on Airbnb, we'll get like I would say maybe 2 to 3 week inquiry, and then they come and stay. And then once they're talking to you, you find out that they actually want to stay like a couple months. So we've had some luck converting some of the services out there into more of a direct relationship, which is cool.
One we had recently that was like that. They were looking to buy their first home. It was mom, dad, and 2 kids, and they rented the place for I think 5 weeks, and then 1 extra week kind of outside of Airbnb, and that gave them time to find the home, to get into escrow, and to close. So it was really cool. They were super appreciative, and for us, I mean, we got like 2 months worth of income since they were paying that higher Airbnb rate, and they were happy for it because it saved them a lot of money versus a hotel.
Yeah, that is a very unique situation that is. I feel like it's kind of untapped, that transitionary period. People that are looking to purchase properties or to move, to relocate, and they need like that transition stay, because you don't want to get into a long-term contract with someone that's going to be, if you're just going to be staying there for just a few months. You said that you're full-time real estate investors now. I'm curious to how you approach properties when you're looking to purchase them. Having this short-term rental background, but also doing the fix and flips and the long-term rentals. How do you approach an investment?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, okay. So first off, I mean, I love looking in neighborhoods that I know are going to make a great short-term rental. So I've got my peripheral vision on looking at like Big Bear and Lake Arrowhead, because we have one up in that area now. Obviously San Diego, and then kind of along the coast and other parts of Southern California. So that's kind of step one is targeting where you're going to be looking. Step 2 is just evaluate whatever you can get your hands on. At this point, we probably have at least 1 property come into our email inbox or get a call or whatever, at least like 1 per day. So we have people on staff that work for us that can help us evaluate those. So we want to make sure that not only is it going to be a great short-term rental if we want to go that route, but also we want to make sure we're buying in at the right price. And then when the time comes to actually sell and liquidate that property, we want to make sure that we're going to be able to cover all of our costs, cover the salaries, cover the payments, and make a good profit as well. So there's a lot that goes into evaluating, and of course we want to get a property inspection and make sure there's nothing terrible going on, and if there is, you want to make sure that you can adequately handle it and get that budget lined up too. And you want to make sure you've got capital partners on board and people that see the vision of where you're headed with this project, and can finance your project. So there's a lot that goes into it for sure, but that's all part of the fun.
And even on a fix and flip, I think in the back of our minds, we're thinking, okay, worst case scenario, if the numbers don't end up being what we anticipated, can we keep this as a rental and do Airbnb and at least, cover the monthly payment plus the utilities, maybe recoup a little bit of our investment initially while we wait for it to appreciate again or for better comps to come around so that we can sell it. So fortunately that hasn't happened yet, but definitely kind of the plan B in our mind is, if something were to happen on a fix and flip, then just kind of switch gears and go into a short-term rental as a way of, making the investment make sense.
So from my understanding is the first thing that you're looking for is you're looking in the neighborhoods that would kind of be prime areas for short-term rentals. What type of areas are you looking out for?
Tourism, and even where we live, people will, of course, anywhere that people live, they want to drive, let's say anywhere from an hour to maybe 3.5 hours to go out of town for a weekend. So we want to look at where are they going to head to? What's around in your state? What kind of fun things are going on? And then look at how far of a distance people are willing to drive from that central location. So for example, one of our properties is located in Running Springs, California, and it's halfway between Big Bear Lake and Lake Arrowhead. So you can drive, just down the way a little bit and reach both of those. So that happens to be a good neighborhood for that. And then the ones in San Diego, we're looking at what's nearby. Do you got the convention centers, or do you have theme parks nearby? Hiking, restaurants,
airports,
Starbucks. Everybody loves to walk everywhere these days. So if you're in an urban neighborhood, even better. And then you also kind of want to gauge crime and what's going on with that. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff to keep your eye open for.
And then when you're evaluating these, I'm interested in your guys' approach. You said that when you're looking for these fix and flips, your intent is to fix it up and make a profit on it. But in the back of your mind, you're also thinking, well, if this doesn't work out, we can short-term rent it. Are you looking to purchase the property to short-term rent initially, or do you look to fix and flip it and take the cash out? Where do you weigh your values on that?
I feel like we have different guidelines when we're looking for something that's going to be a long-term buy and hold that will then do Airbnb, and we're just counting on it being able to produce that monthly income. And we're looking at the tourism and how popular the area is. We're looking at, are there a lot of shops and restaurants and, boutiques and different places that are going to attract people that come on vacation for a weekend or are going to be in town on business. I think some vacation rentals, you can treat them almost like corporate housing, and they do even better. Whereas with a fix and flip, it doesn't necessarily have to be in a trendy or cute area. It can be out in a more rural area, and that can be part of the appeal. So it wouldn't necessarily be a place that people are going to go on vacation, but it can still make a lot of sense. So a lot of times we kind of just have different filters for what we're looking for if it's a fix and flip versus if it's a short-term rental, but there can be some overlap.
And you kind of use the short-term rental as a safety net. Like if the fix and flip, if you go a little bit over your budget, you can use that short-term rental to kind of hold you over until you find another property that you can liquidate that out of and purchase it. Do you ever, when you are doing these though, do you say like, this is a property that we just need to keep because it's a cash cow and it's doing real well?
Yeah, absolutely. For example, the Mountain House, that's one of them where you're like, okay, well, why would I ever want to sell this? I'm even struggling to want to sell it at this point. We've owned it for coming up on a couple years now, but you're like, why do I want to sell this when winter comes along and it's like just earning so much money, like hundreds and hundreds of dollars per night, sometimes up to like $1,000 a night, because it's 2 separate units, right? And that's one of them to where you're looking at the deal and you're like, okay, definitely fix it up and flip it, but I really want to capture as much of that short-term rental as possible, and pick up on that cash flow along the way. So, and it's kind of like almost, man, I want to keep some of these as like a family vacation destination. And there's just so many possibilities that become lit up in your mind when you start really getting into the nitty gritty of this business.
When we look at short-term rentals, a lot of times we're thinking, is this someplace that I'd like to go? Or if I buy this and there's, a couple weeks where it's not booked, is this a place that I'd like to, invite my family to come out and spend
absolutely.
a couple weeks in the summer?
And it's been great to have family come to our short-term rentals and stay, especially up in the mountains and things like that. Or even just friends in town. Go crash out at one of my places. Family all the time, they're always like, hey, can we come and stay here, or whatever the case. What do you have open on these dates? Friends always calling us up. What do you have open on these dates? So with that said, I want to make sure as we expand our business and open up into different states and different parts of our own state in California as well, I want to be targeting places that I like to go visit. So where do I like to visit? I like to go to Lake Havasu. We got a trip coming up there next month, and different places in different parts of the country as well.
Hawaii.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. They have a lot of restrictions as well. There's restrictions with a lot of different cities, as you guys know. But if you're going to be going to these places anyways, you might as well get a rental there.
Going back to when you're evaluating a deal, because I think that's so interesting how you kind of approach your short-term rental investing, doing the fix and flip. When you're looking at a property, what are you like, because you're obviously buying places that are needing a lot of work done to them. Are you fixing them up, or when you're analyzing the deal, are you thinking about it from a standpoint of like a short-term rental, or are you looking from it from a standpoint of just like, we just need to be able to get the cash out of this as soon as possible?
Well, there's a lot of benefits to and tax advantages to holding the property longer. So when you're able to cross over from that capital gains of that fix and flip money into the into basically passive income and be able to depreciate the asset and things like that, it opens up a lot more benefits that you can use when you're actually analyzing the property. So it's not just about cash flow, but it's also about write-offs and how you're able to, obviously like write off the interest on the property and all the taxes and stuff. So the longer that you can hold the property, the more write-offs that you can get and the less taxes that you have to pay. So all of this comes into play when you're targeting that property and deciding on if we want to make a move on it, and do we want to make a short-term flip kind of move on it, or do we want to do a long-term play and do short-term rentals for a number of years. So for example, we're going to be expanding out of state, and those I'm just looking at exclusively from the short-term rental front. So any kind of money that we can make rehabbing those is I'm just gonna call it gravy, because we're planning on holding those ones for at least 10 years at the very least. So when you're looking at holding something super long term, it's like, I don't care if it appreciates, like I don't really care how much I make of a margin. It's just all about that short-term rental passive income.
Wow, very very cool, very interesting approach to how you guys are looking to utilize your guys' skills to maximize that. What has been the most challenging part of starting your short-term rental business?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, I mean, we've had definitely some unique experiences, and some can be kind of like a double-edged sword. And for example, we use on our mountain house, we use a vacation rental management company. So I feel like there's always a learning curve when you're outsourcing the work to other people, especially ones that you don't know. So I know there can be some opportunity there, for example, for co-hosting instead of maybe using a vacation rental management company. So there's challenges with just making sure that you have your systems completely ironed out. So everything from the guidebook, from check-in procedures, check-out procedures.
Extra keys in case people forget to put them back in the lockbox.
Yeah, and just really thinking super thoroughly about what's going to happen when I get a call in the morning, like in 2 o'clock in the morning, because the electricity went out.
Or when they check in and they can't figure out how to work the Amazon Fire Stick. There's all kinds of stuff that comes up.
Yeah, so there's just things that are case by case, and you get random calls all the time when stuff kind of is going awry, but that's just part of it. So I guess the challenge is just kind of keeping calm and trying to figure out how to best meet the customer's needs while also, not having them cancel and also getting that thing fixed right away, that thing that they need. So it really does help to have people that you can rely on and call up that live close to the property, especially when you're managing things that are hours and hours away.
You want boots on the ground because you don't want to be getting in your car on Friday night, fighting traffic for 4 hours to get to a house that's 2 hours away. And, by the time you get there, everybody's really frustrated. So you want some people you can delegate and put on these tasks that live a lot more local to the properties themselves.
Do you have that approach with every investment that you guys are going to be making? Like, is there going to be someone that's going to be able to manage this property for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, you max out at about 2 or 3 because you just get spread too thin.
Yeah, and we don't want to max out at that low of numbers. I mean, we have had, like I said, like 20-something listings, and we want to, at this point, have like 20-something properties in the next couple of years here. And so you want to make sure that you have your system set up and kind of checks and balances of testing different things to make sure that what you're growing is sustainable and that there's room for that growth. So you don't want to, hit a glass ceiling here. This is your business. You can structure it however you want. So I say structure it for the most freedom as possible. And looking at that and deciding, which vacation rental management companies to work with versus do I want to just be managing them all myself. We decided to open up that avenue and go with management companies because, we do take a 10% hit on the fees, but it's definitely worth it when you're freed up to be able to work on other projects that are going to make you, more money in the short run.
So for every property that you're going into, you go in there with the intent to have a vacation rental management company manage all the systems that are in place, or do you have systems that you already have that you ask them to implement?
I would say the systems that we already have that we ask them to implement are like, we like to pick our own cleaners. A lot of times, like who they have recommended, their prices have just been astronomical. And when we've been able to kind of build that personal relationship one-on-one with somebody that we find ourselves, or maybe even that has been a referral, and you kind of get that cleaning system down pat with those people where you've got that personal relationship, like it's just so much better.
It really is. And a specific example with the house that Lindsey's been referencing, the mountain house, there was a number of repairs that would come up pretty much every other guest. Something would not necessarily break, but just malfunction, or, there was just little issues that sprung up here and there, which is typical with homes, even if they've been renovated, because there's a lot of wear and tear from from different guests.
It could be even like the toilet clogging to, it could be like the blind, like the string for the blinds came off.
Yeah, the heater wasn't working, or it was, but it heated up the bottom unit too quick and then the top unit too slow. Just little things, right? So one thing that I found is when you can choose your own cleaning service or cleaning staff, cleaning crew, a lot of times one of the women, her boyfriend or husband, will also be basically a handyman. And so when she goes up and she's going to be there for like 6 to 8 hours doing all the laundry and servicing all the rooms, he'll be there fixing the shower valve that broke, or he'll be there, fixing the screen or the vent or X, Y, or Z. Not always, but sometimes. And that's awesome, because if you just have the handyman out, he's going to charge you $200, $250, and then you're out another, $175 to $200 for the cleaning fee. But if you get them both together, you just end up spending a lot less. And they're grateful because they saved money instead of having to take 2 separate trips. They just carpooled. And so there's little things like that. That's a specific example, but the premise applies across the board, that when you can choose your own people that you work with, you tend to get a better value, and you tend to get things simplified as well, and get more for your money.
No, that's key. Choosing your own people. You could let the management companies handle that type of stuff, but you don't. It's not your quality assurance that you're guaranteeing. You're depending on theirs, and Lord knows where they're getting all their references from.
Oh yeah.
What has been the most?
The ones that are local here in San Diego, we tend to manage ourselves, just because for whatever reason, they don't really give us that much problems or hassles. Oh wait, I take that back. There was a giant plumbing incident.
Oh my gosh, like sewer, not just like, that was, I don't want to gross out the viewer, so we won't go into the gory details.
Thank you.
One thing I found, this is super random, one thing I found that's actually really ideal to do as a host is to text a welcome message, like not just through the app, but actually through the text, that says, hey, welcome to San Diego. If you need any recommendations on coffee shops, restaurants, hot spots, or places to visit, don't hesitate to reach out. We've lived here 19 years, and we're happy to give you some recommendations. That information is already in the book, like the welcome packet or the welcome binder that they see when they walk into the home. But when you text that, there's just, I think it's like, it's endearing to the person staying that they know there's a real couple on the other side of this transaction. This is somebody's home. And if we do have questions, we can reach out. But also, it's not just a giant, faceless corporation, but it's, somebody named Judah and his wife, Lindsey. And I did want a recommendation on where to go for a nice dinner Saturday night, with the family. And so I try to do that because I think it just helps to make a positive experience for the renters.
Yeah.
And you do that through your outside of the platform?
I can do it on the message on Airbnb or HomeAway, but sometimes if they text me first, or if their number is in there instead of just an email, then I'll do it that way as well, because I feel like it's a little bit more direct as opposed to going through the email. But either way works.
Okay. And what has been the most challenging part of scaling your short-term rental business?
For me, it's organizational stuff, the systems and the software and all that stuff. You have to be willing to let go of certain things and delegate, and that can be challenging from just an organizational perspective.
And for me, I think it's probably time. We have a little baby, and I just became a first-time mom.
Oh, congratulations.
So thank you. She's sleeping in there right now, so she's out of the way right now. But there's a lot of things that can pop up just to where you're like, man, I really want to analyze that next property right now, but when am I going to schedule that in? So the challenge is definitely like, I know exactly where my next property is going to be. Like, I know exactly where I want to go. I know like exactly what I'm looking for, but you just have to be diligent about scheduling in those activities that are going to get you to the next level.
So it sounds like creating systems, Judah, was yours, and then being diligent to create the systems is what yours was, Lindsey.
Yeah.
Systems, and then implementing and being consistent about it, for sure.
And what type of systems do you guys have in place? I'm kind of going through that process myself with like I'm starting a cleaning company, so having systems in place for like recruiting funnel and dealing with employees, you have to have all these different systems. What type of systems do you have in place with your business that you've had to create?
Well, that's a good point.
Syncing calendars through Google so that your cleaners are notified immediately once you get a booking. I mean, that's just simply like one small example, but when we're analyzing a fix and flip, we have like a profit analyzer spreadsheet that puts all the different hard costs of acquisition, and then as well as selling and the rehab and the hold costs and utilities, all of it, the points, the fees, the loans, and you get a much better idea. Something can look like a grand slam on paper, then all of a sudden, you put it into the spreadsheet and you're like, ooh, we're going to lose money on this. So it's important. That's a system in a very concrete way in terms of like an Excel spreadsheet. But we almost never make a decision without really poring over the numbers. And that's a good way to see it visually and be able to crunch the numbers and determine whether or not it's going to make sense.
Do you have a system in place for when you're trying to find these properties that would fit your criteria, or is it you guys are just kind of searching through like the MLS and stuff like that?
Well, that's a great question. So we do have a virtual assistant who lives in the Philippines, and he works for us full time. So I would say at least 90% of his job is reaching out to people about possibly either buying or renting their house. So that I would say is a huge system that we have in place. A lot of people would never think about doing anything like that, but it's a great kind of first step towards getting your next property. And then of course from there, we have to go through our analyzation process.
That is super interesting, and I never thought about using like a virtual assistant to actually to reach out to potential people that you could be doing like rental arbitrage from. There's so many people are listing their properties as rentals, but I haven't ever heard of anybody using a virtual assistant to reach out to them to say, hey, are you open to having us rent your property and then sublet it? Like that's pretty unique. Is that basically what you're doing with them?
Yeah. So we have kind of like several different types of people that we're targeting, and they're just across the board really. So they get an email and maybe they never expressed interest in selling their house or renting it out or anything, but we're just kind of approaching them blind. So that's one kind of email. And then maybe they already have their place up for rent or for sale, and we're reaching out to them, kind of just starting a conversation, getting things going with them on that front, seeing if they want to sell it or
lease option
or sublet it, of course, or kind of do a seller carry type situation where we can buy it and they'll finance us, and kind of seeing like how much they'll take per month, how much money down do they want. Different things like that. So that's getting the conversation open. That's kind of getting the ball rolling. And then there's what to do with all the success that you're having, because, all these people want you to come and look at their place, and it could be big opportunities. And you're like, okay, how do I fit everything in?
Oh my gosh, the rent is Santa Fe one.
Yeah, by the way, we got to go look at that one.
Exactly. Totally forgot.
Wow, that's a really useful tip to have the virtual assistant that is generating those leads for you, so that you don't have to spend all that time. Now you have a system in place that they can implement to be able to collect those leads, and then you can just basically analyze that. Is this a good fix and flip? Is it a good short-term rental? Is this something that we could potentially rental arbitrage? I think that's very, very unique and a golden tip. I think anybody listening to this episode should definitely take that and run with it. That's definitely key. What do you do to set your units apart? I know, Lindsey, you said that you're a interior designer. What do you do specifically for your units?
Okay, you want to know the down and dirty, quickest way to make this place look absolutely beautiful? I will tell you right now. first of all, go on Craigslist, offer up, let go, whatever, and put in the key terms, all for, that's it, all for, or everything for, something like that. Or look in moving. They're moving out of state, put it out of state. So you're looking for these, and you want to find the people who have to sell their whole apartment. And then you also want to make sure it's good stuff, and that you can get a good deal on it. So a lot of times, like, we'll locate these people, and they just need to sell everything and move out of state. For whatever reason, they just want to sell it all for a cheap price. We've done this a few times now. And then, what you're looking for are, of course, beds and tables and couches and lamps and all kinds of good stuff. So a lot of times, for example, we did a 2-bedroom unit, and we got pretty much everything for $900. That was like pretty much furnishing everything: dressers, a flat screen, a Keurig, pots and pans, art,
coffee table.
Yeah. And you want to make sure this is beautiful items. So once you have the basics, then you want to get your fill-in items. One thing that we do is I used to just hit up a lot of like Goodwill, Salvation Army type things, and I would look for your neutrals. So anything that's clear or white or gold, silver, beige, and gray, and just trying to get a bunch of stuff. They're good for like flat, plates and vases and things like that. And start filling in with the cheapest things first. Even hit up dollar stores, little vases, little plants, just little things like that. And then go a step up, hit up places like Factory to You, DD's Discounts, Ross, and then step up Ross, Burlington. And you're always looking for the most bang for your buck. You're looking for neutral, beautiful decor. And of course, if you got a theme going on, look for the theme. But when in doubt, just get neutral things, and then spend a little bit more money on something that's like a pop item, like a reclaimed barnwood farmer's table, something like that. Even if you want to get a pop piece, I've had a lot of luck getting those secondhand on Craigslist. So believe it or not, guys, I have furnished a mansion for, I think, less than $3,000. I think it was around $2,500. I furnished like a huge giant mansion, a couple of them actually. We're mansion makers, so we flip mansions and ranches. So right now I think I have 6 residences fully staged, and it all looks like absolutely beautiful, amazing, luxe, top of the line, perfect. It's great.
And you found all of these through basically wholesaling other people's apartments when they're moving, like all the interiors?
Yeah, they're moving and they just want to liquidate everything really quick.
You can get all of the furniture and all of the big items that you need when somebody's moving, because they got a job promotion, so they're moving out of town or out of state. They're just getting rid of everything. And like Lindsey said, we've done that before. $900, and we filled a big U-Haul and had probably 75% of the things we needed. And then what we did for all of like the plates and fans and different individual items, we went to IKEA, spent a few $100s there.
Yeah, like
$500.
I think even less. Like I think you could do $175 and get all of your basics out of the way at IKEA and Walmart.
Little end tables,
maybe
power
$250,
strips, things like that.
Yeah,
for a
little
extension
rental. Cords, coffee maker, toaster.
You don't need that if you're staging like a fix and flip, but if it's gonna be somewhere where people are staying for a weekend or staying for a week, and you want to have all those little the ice maker in the freezer, stuff like that, then IKEA is a really great place to supplement all the things you couldn't find on Craigslist, OfferUp, or like Facebook Marketplace, for instance.
Wow, that's golden. That's an awesome tip. Is there anything that you do that has helped your guests leave positive reviews?
That's a good question.
It is.
For whatever reason, anytime that you start some kind of conversation with them, something personalized that just lets them know that you're thinking of them, like Judah's talking about, even over a text, just reaching out, checking in, they usually appreciate it enough to leave a good review. So anytime they're coming in contact with you, And if you're lucky, it's face-to-face in person or on a phone call. But if not, usually a text will make something happen.
I like to send a text if they check in on Friday, Saturday morning, and say, hey, and there's a blank because I copy and paste this, but then I customize it. Hey, and then the person's name. Just wanted to make sure that you found everything okay. Please let us know if there's anything we need to bring over, or if there's anything else we can supply. And that kind of gives them an open door to say, hey, you know what, if we could get one more space heater, that'd be great. Or, oh, you know what, I meant to ask if you have a blow-up bed, or an extra set of pillows, whatever it is, right? So you're inviting them to make a request so they don't feel awkward about it, but you're also checking in, making sure they slept well, everything was comfortable. And I feel like people really appreciate that. 9 times out of 10, they say, no, everything's great, we're heading to the beach. But for those people that want an extra set of towels or whatever, you can let them know it's in the linen closet. And I feel like that again helps to kind of establish that rapport and tends to generate better reviews at the end.
And then I think that also opens up having extras at your property, helps definitely to get good reviews. So like you mentioned a few of them, outlet strips, surge protectors. I think those are great because if somebody's blow drying their hair and it pops the fuse, like, oh my gosh, it's just a nightmare to have to go outside. So surge protectors, space heaters are really awesome to have. Extra blankets, extra pillows,
fans,
paper towels, toilet paper, coffee. Like, you want to just have as much as you can over the unit. Even cleaning supplies. Some people lock theirs up, but I like to leave it out. And just kind of, condiments, snacks. We used to do pastries for every single morning that they were there. They'd get a pastry.
We get it at Costco. That's a golden tip right there, dude. Do all your shopping. Yeah. Do all your shopping for guest-related stuff at Costco.
And then sometimes a bottle of $2 Chuck, like the wine. But a lot of times we would get wine, like they would give us wine. And then another thing I like to do is like write a little thank you card if I had a chance. So that is pretty much a guarantee. Leave it in front of their door the day that they check out.
And is there one house rule that has really saved you before?
No fires, no flames, no cigarettes or incense or anything flammable.
Yeah, so
that's a big one.
I have made it a point to remove all the wicks out of my candles because I don't want any kind of fires happening. And I also put, if they're going to start a fire in the fireplace, they need to get specific permission, even if it's just a text or something.
It's a text when you start it and text when you put it out. So
even if it's just birthday cakes and somebody's birthday, I'll get a text or a call like, hey, is it okay if we do a birthday cake? I know you have no candle policy. So that has been a big lifesaver. Even still, I get people who will light a candle and leave, and the wax has fallen on the furniture, or wax has like spilled over, and it's like, thank God the fire wasn't started, right? I mean, it's just scary what can happen. So I usually will get I like to decorate with candles, so I'll get the kind that come on automatically every day at like 5 p.m. during the golden hour, and they only stay on for like 4 hours. So that's what I'll decorate with. And then if I need to get wax candles because they're cheaper, I will literally pick out the wick and just set the candle there, so there's no fires.
It's very creative. I've never heard of the no fire rule, but I mean it's important, and I like that tip about the taking the wick out. That's pretty creative. Get the beauty of the candle without the wick.
One thing that's really good if you're booking outside of Airbnb or HomeAway or any of the major platforms, if you're just doing something through Facebook or Craigslist, is I ask for everybody's ID and I make it like a deal breaker. So it could just be, mom, dad, and, aunt, uncle, and a couple kids, and it's a family, and you're like, oh, it's safe. I still, everybody, if they're going to have an additional person over, even if they're just having them over for dinner, I'm like, hey, that's cool, but text me a photo of their ID because I want to know who's on my property at all times. And I just explain it to them. I'm like, it's for liability reasons. And they're normally pretty understanding, but if they're not, then that's a red flag.
Definitely. And if you could if you could do anything differently, what would you do? Start from scratch.
That's a great question.
I would go after more. Yeah, definitely. And I would have expanded to other states like a lot more earlier on. And yeah, just not, I would say like, don't be afraid, and go for it. And another thing is, if you're doing the rental arbitrage method, make sure you have like really good clauses in your contracts to where not only are they verbally saying that you can do this, not only are they signing off on it that you can do this, but like maybe even its own special page to where they understand like they are definitely giving you permission to do it. and
you're exclusively the one in charge of selecting and subletting to the renters of your choice. You want to make sure that that's clarified.
Yeah, and I think maybe another thing would be to I would have started doing the background checks a little bit earlier on. So we have a membership for spyfly.com. It is, at this point, for some reason they gave it to us for like $3 a month. I think the intro cost was $30 a month, and then after so long it just dropped down for us. But that was like super imperative to screening and vetting your potential guests online there.
Especially if they're staying longer, not so much for like a weekend person, but somebody that might be there like 2, 3, 4 months.
Yeah. And usually when they're booking through an online platform, there's a little bit more vetting that goes on, and there's good reviews that speak for them and all that kind of thing. But I would say definitely a good tip is to have some sort of background check service that you can at least do a public record search, because there has been many different people that we've had to turn down because we saw like felonies and stuff like that. So
you don't want somebody living with you that's got a like domestic abuse charge. You know what I mean? Like if you can help it, it's not ideal.
Definitely doing the background check is definitely very important, and spyfly.com is something that we can definitely look into. And if you could give one piece of advice to someone who's trying to start their Airbnb business, what would it be?
Oh yeah, I would say see if you can get a house, and maybe it's already where you live now. Maybe you've got your own place already, and this kind of description is going to match up well. But if not, see if you can rent a house that has the master suite with its own private entrance. And maybe it has a slider on there. Maybe it's got French doors, maybe just a regular door, but it's got like ideally its own private entrance.
Access to the outside.
Yeah. And this would be like, you know, in a situation where you want your own privacy. Maybe you're a small family, you know, and you have a baby or kids. But I would say get a place that has a master suite that is self-contained. It's got a bathroom, a full bath in there, and it's got a decent size. Guests can come and go as they leave, and they don't need to come into your space. They don't need to bother you. So we had done this a couple times, and it's worked out well. But in that situation, you can set up kind of like a hutch. You could put a microwave there, a mini fridge, a hot plate, a coffee machine, and you can make it like a little suite, like a hotel room. And in that situation, of course, if you're doing rental arbitrage, you want to get permission in writing and whatnot. But if you're just doing it out of where you live now, go for it. Just get it started. And especially if you have kids or something, you know, that's a way to get going, and that eliminates the number one fear that most people have, which is, you know, a stranger in my house.
No,
I would say my number one tip, if you're just getting started with Airbnb, is don't be afraid of the best of both worlds approach, where from, let's say, September through March, it's a long-term rental, and you maybe have a month-to-month agreement with somebody, and then April 1st or May 1st rolls around, and for the next 4 or 5 months you have it as Airbnb. You don't have to Airbnb something year-round to make 90% of the profit that you'd make on Airbnb. So depending on if you're in a winter town, or if you're in a city that has a big tourist draw because of a sports team, this would be relative to when that sports team is playing. Or if you're in a coastal area where the summers are really popular, just focus on the 4 to 5 months where everybody's coming to your neck of the woods to visit, and Airbnb it then, and the rest of the time just have it month to month. If it's furnished, you're going to get more month to month than by about 25% than you would just having it be a year lease anyway. So it's a win-win, and then you can kind of test the water, so to speak, or dip your toe into Airbnb when it's most lucrative.
No, that's a great tip, and it directly applies to the place that we live in. We can only short-term rent half the year; the other half can only be long-term rental. And with more and more regulations coming to short-term rentals, people have to get creative that way. Looking at a property not just with the approach of, can we short-term rent this? Oh, there's regulations. I guess not. But if there are those kind of stipulations where it's like half a year doing this, then you kind of have to approach your investments with the mindset of, well, what can we make on this as a long-term rental, and can we still make the that amazing return off the maybe the 6 months that we are allowed to rent. So great advice. And where do you see short-term rentals in the future? I know you've been in the space for a while, being real estate investors, fixer-uppers. I'm sure that you have some insight on where short-term rentals are going.
Well, there's a lot of regulation that we are up against at this point, as far as what's going to be the next city to ban short-term rentals. But I think where we're going is you see a lot of people lobbying for this. They want to be able to have the right to do their short-term rentals. So, it's kind of replacing hotels. So you got that pushback from the hotel industry. But for example, Airbnb personally hired lobbyists, or I guess you want to call them just signature gatherers and canvassers for San Diego, and they dumped, I think it was over $1 million into that in San Diego, and they were able to overturn a ruling to keep Airbnbs legal here. So I think that where it's going is, it's going to be a lot more opportunity for just an average person, just somebody who has even a spare room in their house that they want to Airbnb. I think it's just a much bigger opportunity. It's opening up doors. It's bringing people to other parts of the country that they wouldn't be able to go to because of the fact that there's an affordable Airbnb there. So it's opening up travel. It's opening up experiences and new relationships, new friendships. And I think where it's going is it's going to be easier for people to jump in, and there's going to be more opportunity available.
On that note, where I see it going is, and this has already started to happen, but the hotels and the motels and the lodges are going to begin even more listing their institutional, basically, properties, these hotels and whatnot, on Airbnb. They've already begun doing that, but I think it's going to become more and more not just something that's a small portion, but the majority, in order to compete and in order to basically have that exposure. And of course, then that kind of undermines a little bit of what Airbnb was about, where it's just, a person or a family opening up their home. And so then the way individuals like us kind of have a competitive edge is we'll include a trip to Legoland, like tickets for Legoland, or tickets for Knott's Berry Farm, or tickets for Disneyland, for instance, or a water park, or the zoo, and you include those tickets and put in your title like cute 2-bedroom cottage, SeaWorld tickets included, right? Something like that. All of a sudden, now you're not just getting a place to lay your head at night and take a shower in the morning and eat breakfast before you go out, but you're actually getting the experience that you came there for. Take your kids to Legoland or whatever it is, go see a concert. You're getting that included. So it's more about the experience as a whole, as opposed to just place to crash. And I think that'll begin to be the disparity in between the individuals that are doing Airbnb and the larger hotels that are also on Airbnb.
No, very, very, very interesting approaches. I love how both of you have your own kind of creative ways of imagining how short-term rentals are going in the future, and definitely appreciate your guys' insight. Is there any way that anybody can reach you if they have any questions about short-term renting or investing in the San Diego area or anything?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, we got our Facebook page, which is just facebook.com/mansionmakers. So we would welcome anybody who wants to add us on there. And what about like texting or emailing, anything like that?
Yeah, my email is info, I-N-F-O, @mansionmakersllc.com. The website's not up, so if you go to Mansion Makers LLC right now, there's nothing there. We're going to build out a really good web page, but right now, at least I have the the URL and the email address, info@mansionmakersllc.com. And
yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, by all means. sdrehabbers@gmail, that's another one. So find us on Facebook. I'd be happy to connect with anybody and make new friends.
Of course,
Yeah.
if anybody needs a ranch or mansion rehabbed with other people's apartment buildings, then definitely they can reach out to you guys. So thank you so much for. I think it's just so awesome. You guys are a brilliant success story. Just starting from renting out your room, and now you're having this beautiful child, and you're killing it, and you're looking to expand. You guys are truly a short-term rental success story, and I was so glad to have you on the show. I can't wait to keep on seeing where you're going. And without further ado, until next time, Host Nation, keep on hosting. Hope you hosts benefited from the show. If you found value, please go on over to iTunes or Stitcher, leave a review, and let us know what you enjoy about the show. If you'd like to talk to the hosts that have been featured in these episodes, as well as the Host Nation, then go on over to our Facebook group, Short-Term Rental Success Secrets. Talk to you hosts in the next episode. Keep on hosting.